When a young black journalist returns to his upscale apartment building, he's confronted by a white woman who accuses him of not belonging. She even uses pepper spray in an attempt to drive him out of the place he calls home, all because of her outdated and misguided prejudices. What follows is a gripping story of discrimination, community, and the power of standing up for the truth. The sun was setting behind the towering glass facade Summit Heights, one of the city's most luxurious residential buildings. The lobby gleamed with polished marble floors, a glittering chandelier casting a soft glow over the space. Residents dressed in tailored suits and designer outfits hurried past, their footsteps echoing in the pristine hall. Marcus Carter stepped through the revolving glass doors, wearing a simple black hoodie, gray sweatpants, and running shoes. He carried a camera bag slung over one shoulder and looked slightly out of place amidst the opulence of the lobby. Marcus was in a rush. As a journalist for a local news channel, his days were always packed, and this one had been no different. He had just realized he'd left his keys in the car after a long day of interviews and filming. His mind was occupied with a flurry of thoughts, deadlines, edits, and his colleague Lisa, who had been pestering him all day about an upcoming shoot. He muttered under his breath, "Just grab the keys and get back up to 1502. 5 minutes tops." As Marcus crossed the lobby toward the elevator bank, a sharp voice pierced through the air. "Excuse me." Startled, he turned to see a woman approaching him. She was in her mid-50s, her face lined with a combination of age and indignation. She wore a tailored beige suit and clutched a leather handbag that seemed worth more than his monthly rent. Her name, as he would later learn, was Martha Collins, a long-time resident of the building who prided herself on keeping the riffraff out. "Can I help you?" Marcus asked politely, his tone neutral despite the sharpness in hers. "Help me?" Martha's eyes narrowed, scrutinizing him from head to toe. "I should be asking you that. What are you doing here?" Marcus frowned, confused by her aggressive tone. "I live here," he said simply, gesturing toward the elevator. Martha let out a derisive laugh, loud enough to turn a few heads in the lobby. "You live here? In Summit Heights?" Her eyes flicked to his casual clothes and camera bag. "Right. Do you think the residents of this building dress like Trackhouse rappers?" Marcus blinked, momentarily stunned. He wasn't sure if he was more offended by the comment or the sheer audacity of her tone. "Look," he said, trying to keep his voice steady, "I live in apartment 1502. I just came down to grab my keys. I'd appreciate it if you let me get on with my evening." But Martha wasn't done. She stepped closer, blocking his path. 1502. "That's a joke. The cheapest apartment in this building costs more than most people's annual salaries. Do you even have any idea how much rent is here?" Marcus's patience was wearing thin. "Actually, yes, I do," he said, crossing his arms. "And for your information, I pay more than $1,800 a month, so maybe it's you who should be asking yourself if you belong here." Martha gasped, her hand clutching her chest as though his words had physically struck her. "How dare you?" she hissed. "You think you can just waltz in here and—" "I'm sorry," Marcus interrupted, his tone firm. "But I really don't have time for this." He stepped around her and headed toward the elevator, but Martha wasn't letting him off so easily. "Security," she called out, her voice ringing through the lobby. "Tom, someone get Tom down here. We've got an intruder." Several residents paused to watch the scene unfold, their curious glances making Marcus feel like he was on stage in a play he hadn't signed up for. Marcus sighed deeply, pinching the bridge of his nose. I'm not an intruder," he said, turning back to face her. "I'm a resident, and I just want to get to my apartment." Martha pointed a manicured finger at him, her voice rising. "Then prove it." "What's your apartment number?" "Him. What's the passcode for the mailroom?" Marcus exhaled sharply, struggling to remain calm. 1502. "And I don't need to tell you the passcode." "Exactly," she snapped triumphantly, as if he'd just confessed to a crime. "You don't even know it." Before Marcus could respond, the building's security guard, Tom Harris, appeared, jogging over from the front desk. He was a stocky man in his 40s, wearing a navy uniform that looked slightly too tight. "What's going on here?" Tom asked, glancing between Marcus and Martha. "This man," Martha began, her voice quivering with righteous anger, "was trying to break into the building. I caught him sneaking around, and when I confronted him, he refused to leave." "That's not true," Marcus interjected, his frustration bubbling to the surface. "I told her I live here. I'm in 1502. I just came down to grab my keys." Tom hesitated, looking uncertain. He vaguely recognized Marcus but wasn't sure enough to intervene decisively. "Do you have ID?" he asked. Marcus reached for his pocket, only to realize his wallet was still upstairs. "I left it in my apartment," he admitted. "But you've seen me before, right?" "I come through the lobby all the time." Tom scratched the back of his head. "Maybe? I'm not sure." Martha scoffed. "Exactly. He doesn't live here." The tension in the room was palpable. Marcus felt the weight of every stare on him, the unspoken judgment in their eyes. His phone buzzed in his pocket, a call from Lisa. He ignored it, his focus firmly on diffusing the situation without losing his temper. "Listen," he said, his voice steady but firm. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I just want to go home." Martha crossed her arms, standing her ground. "Over my dead body." The tension in the lobby of Summit Heights reached a boiling point as more residents gathered to watch the confrontation unfold. Some whispered among themselves, others simply stared, unsure of how to intervene. Marcus could feel their eyes on him, a mix of curiosity and judgment. He tried to focus, keeping his frustration in check. Martha Collins, however, was unrelenting. She took a step closer to Marcus, her voice rising to a near shriek. "You think you can just stroll in here and lie to my face? I know everyone in this building, and I've never seen you before." Marcus took a deep breath, resisting the urge to snap back. "Look," he said, his voice measured. "You don't know everyone here, clearly. I moved in 6 months ago, and I've been minding my own business ever since." "Liar." Martha jabbed a finger in his direction. "You're just trying to worm your way into someone's apartment, probably waiting to rob them blind, or worse." At that moment, Marcus's phone buzzed again. He glanced at the screen. Lisa Hamilton, his colleague, was calling for the 3rd time. With an exasperated sigh, he answered, stepping slightly to the side for a moment of privacy. "Lisa, now's not a good time." Lisa's voice was sharp on the other end. "Not a good time. Marcus, we're 10 minutes behind schedule for the shoot, and the producer is breathing down my neck. Where are you?" "I'm dealing with something," Marcus muttered, glancing at Martha, who was still glaring at him like a hawk. "I'll be there as soon as I can." "Well, hurry up," Lisa snapped before hanging up. Marcus pocketed his phone, turning back to find Martha had moved even closer to him. "Who was that?" she demanded, her tone accusatory. "Your lookout. Planning something shady, huh?" "For the last time," Marcus said, his patience wearing thin. "I live here. I'm not planning anything. I'm a journalist, and I'm already late for a shoot because of this nonsense." "Ha," Martha barked a laugh. "A journalist? Is that what you're calling yourself these days? Let me guess, your journalism involves slinging drugs on the side." Marcus stiffened. He dealt with subtle racism before, microaggressions, veiled comments, but this was something else entirely. He met her gaze, his voice low but steady. "You don't know me. And you don't get to judge me based on whatever stereotypes you've cooked up in your head." Before Martha could respond, the building security guard, Tom, stepped in. "All right, that's enough," he said, holding up a hand. "Let's all just calm down." "I am calm," Martha snapped, "but this man is clearly an intruder, and you're standing here doing nothing about it." "Tom," Marcus said, trying to appeal to reason, "you've seen me around. I'm the guy with the camera bag. Always in and out for work." Tom hesitated, scratching the back of his neck. "I mean, yeah, you do look familiar. But I can't just take your word for it. Do you have any proof you live here?" "I told you my ID is upstairs," Marcus said. "If you just let me go grab it, this whole thing will be cleared up." Martha stepped in front of him again, blocking his path to the elevator. "Oh, no, you don't. I'm not letting you grab anything. That's how these things go. Let them out of your sight, and poof, they're gone." Marcus let out a frustrated laugh. "I'm not Houdini, lady. I'm just trying to go home." At that moment, another resident stepped forward. James Turner, a young tech entrepreneur who had been quietly observing the scene, finally spoke up. Mrs. Collins," he said hesitantly, "I think I've seen this guy before." He lives on the 15th floor, doesn't he? Martha turned on James, her expression incredulous. And how would you know? You're hardly around here yourself. James shrugged. I've seen him in the elevator a few times. Pretty sure he's legit. Thank you, Marcus said, giving James a nod of appreciation. See, not everyone here thinks I'm a criminal. But Martha wasn't convinced. She crossed her arms, her gaze fixed on Marcus. That proves nothing. Anyone can loiter in an elevator. If you're so innocent, why don't you show us what's in your bag? Marcus blinked, stunned by the audacity of the demand. What's in my bag? He repeated. Why would I need to show you anything? Because you're hiding something, Martha said, her voice dripping with accusation. Drugs, maybe. Or stolen property. Who knows what you've got in there? Marcus shook his head, his frustration boiling over. You've got to be kidding me. Open the bag, Martha insisted, taking a step closer. Tom interjected, holding up a hand. All right, everyone, let's just take a step back. We're not searching anyone's bag without cause. But Martha was relentless. Cause? He's the cause. I saw him sneaking around, and now he's refusing to cooperate. If that's not suspicious, I don't know what is. The situation was spiraling. Marcus glanced at the growing crowd of onlookers, his jaw tightening. This is ridiculous, he muttered. I don't have to prove anything to her. And that, Martha said triumphantly, is exactly what a guilty person would say. Marcus was about to respond when a sharp voice cut through the tension. What's going on here? Everyone turned to see Samantha Ramirez, a police officer who had just entered the lobby. Her badge glinted under the chandelier light as she strode toward the group, her expression unreadable. This man, Martha began, pointing dramatically at Marcus, was trying to break into the building. I caught him, and now he's refusing to leave. Marcus raised a hand, his voice calm but firm. Officer, that's not true. I live here. She just refuses to believe me. Samantha looked between the two of them, her sharp eyes assessing the situation. All right, she said, let's figure this out. The tension in the air was almost suffocating as Officer Samantha Ramirez stepped into the center of the lobby, her authoritative presence demanding attention. Her eyes flicked from Marcus to Martha, then to the security guard, Tom, who stood awkwardly to the side. The gathered crowd, now numbering about a dozen residents, watched in hushed anticipation. All right, Officer Ramirez began, her voice steady but firm. Let's get this sorted out. So she looked directly at Marcus. You say you live here? Yes, Marcus replied, his tone calm but edged with frustration. I live in apartment 1502. I came down to grab my keys from my car, and now this woman, he gestured toward Martha, is accusing me of trying to break in. Martha immediately cut in. Because he is. He doesn't have any proof he lives here, and he's acting suspicious. I was just doing my civic duty to protect our community. Officer Ramirez held up a hand to silence her. Ma'am, I'll get to you in a moment. Let him finish. Marcus sighed, running a hand over his face. Look, I don't have my ID on me, it's upstairs in my apartment. But I've lived here for 6 months. The security guard here, he nodded toward Tom, has seen me around. And one of your residents, he pointed to James, who gave a small wave, just said he's seen me too. Ramirez turned to Tom. Is that true? Have you seen him before? Tom hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. Yeah, I think I have. He's got that camera bag, always in and out. But, I see a lot of people so. Ramirez raised an eyebrow. Not exactly a ringing endorsement, but noted. Martha seized the moment to jump back in. You see, he can't even prove he lives here. And what about the bag? He won't let anyone see what's inside because he's hiding something. Marcus groaned audibly. It's a camera bag. I'm a journalist. It's got my equipment in it. Then you shouldn't have a problem showing us, Martha snapped. Ramirez stepped in, her tone sharp. All right, enough. Nobody is searching anyone's belongings without consent or a warrant. Let's focus on the bigger issue here, determining if this man actually lives in the building. Turning to Marcus, she asked, do you have any way to confirm your address? Maybe a utility bill on your phone, a text from the building management. Marcus frowned, frustrated at being put on the spot, but he started scrolling through his phone. I might have something, wait. He opened his email app and began typing. Meanwhile, Martha continued to mutter under her breath, loud enough for everyone to hear. This is ridiculous. He's stalling. If he really lived here, he'd have proof by now. Mom, Ramirez said sharply, her eyes narrowing, I need you to be quiet while I'm working. Understood? Martha huffed but didn't argue further, crossing her arms and glaring daggers at Marcus. After a moment, Marcus found the email he was looking for. Here, he said, holding up his phone. This is an email from the building management confirming my lease renewal. It has my name, address, and the apartment number -1502. Ramirez took the phone and examined the email carefully. She nodded, satisfied, before handing it back to him. All right. That's enough for me to confirm that you're a resident here. Thank you, Marcus said, his tone heavy with relief. But Martha wasn't ready to let it go. That doesn't prove anything, she exclaimed, her voice rising. He could have faked that email. You can't trust him. Mom, enough, Ramirez said sharply. You're interfering with. But Martha didn't let her finish. Her hand darted into her oversized handbag, and before anyone could react, she pulled out a small canister of pepper spray. I won't let you make fools of us, she shouted, aiming the spray directly at Marcus. Hooah, 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 hooah. Marcus raised his hands instinctively, backing away. Martha, no, Tom yelled, stepping forward. But it was too late. Martha pressed the nozzle, and a stream of burning spray shot toward Marcus. He twisted his body to avoid the brunt of it, but the mist still caught the side of his face. He stumbled back, coughing and rubbing at his eyes. What the hell is wrong with you? Marcus shouted, his voice raw from the irritation. The crowd gasped audibly, several residents pulling out their phones to record the chaos. Ramirez immediately stepped between Martha and Marcus, drawing her baton but keeping her composure. Mom, drop the spray and step back now. Martha hesitated, her hand shaking as she clutched the canister. He's dangerous. I'm protecting everyone. You're assaulting someone, Ramirez barked. Put the spray down or I will have to detain you. Tom moved quickly to Marcus's side. Are you okay? He asked, handing Marcus a napkin from his pocket. I'll be fine, Marcus muttered, still wiping at his face. His eyes stung, and his chest burned from the spray, but his anger outweighed his discomfort. She just attacked me. In front of everyone. Ramirez advanced on Martha, her voice steady but commanding. This is your final warning. Drop it. Ramirez's patience visibly thinned. She turned to Martha, her expression stern. Ma'am, you need to stop. Right now, the only person causing a disturbance in this building is you. Martha looked stunned, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. I was just trying to protect everyone. No, Ramirez said firmly. You pepper-sprayed a man who wasn't threatening you, accused him of being a criminal without evidence, and refused to listen to reason. That's not protecting anyone, that's harassment. Martha's face turned beet red, but Ramirez cut her off. Ma'am, using pepper spray on someone without justification is a criminal offense. That's assault. Do you understand that? The gathered crowd murmured, some residents nodding in agreement. James stepped forward again, looking uncomfortable but determined. Officer, Marcus didn't do anything to provoke her. She just went off. Thank you for confirming that, Ramirez said, nodding. She turned back to Martha. I'm afraid I'm going to have to take you in for questioning. What? Martha's voice was a shriek now. You can't do this. I was just trying to help. Ramirez gestured to Tom. Can you retrieve the security footage from the lobby? That'll confirm everything we need. Tom nodded and hurried off, while Ramirez took out her handcuffs. Mom, please turn around. This is outrageous. Martha protested as Ramirez gently but firmly cuffed her hands behind her back. You're arresting the wrong person. He's the criminal. No, ma'am, Ramirez said calmly, leading her toward the door. The only person breaking the law here is you. As the lobby quieted down, Marcus let out a long breath. He glanced at James and gave a small nod. Thanks for speaking up. No problem, James replied, looking sheepish. Sorry you had to deal with all that. Tom returned, holding a USB drive. I've got the footage, officer, he said, handing it to Ramirez, who nodded. Good, Ramirez said. This will be part of the report. Marcus's phone buzzed again. This time it was Lisa calling. He answered with a tired sigh. Yeah. Lisa's voice was sharp. Where are you? We've got 15 minutes left before we lose the light. Forget the shoot, Marcus interrupted, his voice calm but firm. What? Lisa sounded incredulous. What do you mean, forget the shoot? The network is expecting. I've got a better story, Marcus said, cutting her off. Something bigger. Trust me, Lisa. This one matters. There was a pause on the other end of the line before Lisa sighed. All right, she said. I'm listening. After telling all, he hung up, finally stepping into the elevator, ready to leave the chaos behind. The elevator doors closed behind Marcus with a faint chime, muffling the murmurs of the lobby below. He leaned back against the cool steel wall, letting out a long, heavy breath. His face still burned slightly from the pepper spray, but the sting of the situation was harder to shake. 6 months, Marcus muttered to himself, shaking his head. 6 months in this building, and this is what it comes to. As the elevator ascended to the 15th floor, Marcus's mind replayed the events of the evening. The accusations, the glares, the utter refusal to believe he belonged, it all sat heavy on his chest. He'd worked hard to make it to this point in his life, to afford a place like Summit Heights, but tonight's events reminded him that for some people, no amount of success would ever be enough to erase their biases. The elevator dinged softly as it arrived at his floor. Marcus stepped out, walking briskly down the quiet hallway to his apartment. He unlocked the door and stepped inside, greeted by the familiar sight of his tidy living room. The space was modest but well kept, with a sleek gray couch, a small but modern kitchen, and framed photos on the walls, snapshots of family, friends, and moments from his journalism career. Dropping his bag on the counter, Marcus headed straight to the bathroom. He splashed more water on his face, trying to soothe the lingering burn from the spray. As he looked at his reflection in the mirror, he couldn't help but wonder how many other people had faced situations like his moments, where they had to justify their existence, defend their place in a world that seemed determined to question it. Downstairs, the scene had finally quieted. Officer Ramirez was finishing her report at the security desk, while Tom replayed the footage from the lobby cameras. Several residents lingered nearby, whispering among themselves. The incident had clearly shaken the building's sense of security, or perhaps its sense of superiority. Ramirez looked up from her notepad and addressed Tom. Make sure the management team reviews this footage and takes appropriate action. Residents need to know that behavior like this won't be tolerated. Tom nodded. Yeah, I'll make sure they see it. Thanks for stepping in, officer. Ramirez glanced toward the entrance, where her squad car idled with Martha sitting inside, still protesting her innocence. Just doing my job, Ramirez said, and if management doesn't handle it, let me know. We can follow up. The next morning, the Summit Heights residents woke up to an unexpected surprise. A news segment was making waves online, featuring their very own lobby and the events of the previous evening. Marcus had worked late into the night, piecing together the story. He didn't sensationalize or exaggerate. He simply laid out the facts, supported by the footage and interviews he had conducted after the incident. The segment began with Marcus standing outside Summit Heights, dressed sharply and speaking directly into the camera. His voice was calm but carried the weight of his experience. Last night, a misunderstanding in this very building turned into something much more a reflection of the biases and assumptions we often carry with us, sometimes without even realizing it. It's a story about fear, prejudice, and the importance of treating one another with respect. The video cut to snippets of the security footage, Martha pulling out the pepper spray, Ramirez stepping in, and Marcus calmly trying to de-escalate the situation. It also featured interviews with James Turner, Officer Ramirez, and even Tom, who admitted he could have handled things better. Moments like these, Marcus concluded in the segment, aren't just about one person or one incident. They're about the larger conversations we need to have as a community. How do we create spaces where everyone feels they belong? How do we challenge our own assumptions and learn to see one another as equals? These are questions worth asking. The response was immediate. Residents of Summit Heights began to confront the reality of what had happened. Some expressed shame or embarrassment for not stepping in sooner, while others took a hard look at their own biases. Management issued a formal apology to Marcus and promised to implement diversity training for staff and residents. As for Martha, the incident led to legal consequences. While the charges against her were minor, the public attention forced her to confront her actions in a way she never had before. In time, she issued a statement of her own, apologizing to Marcus and acknowledging the harm she had caused. A few days later, Marcus stood on his apartment balcony, gazing out at the city skyline. The sun was setting again, casting a warm orange glow over the buildings. His phone buzzed with notifications, messages from colleagues, viewers, and even strangers who had seen the story. Most were supportive, thanking him for shedding light on an important issue. Lisa had called earlier, too, congratulating him on the piece. "You're right," she had said. "This story was way bigger than what we had planned." Marcus smiled to himself, thinking about how much had happened in just a few days. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Prejudice and ignorance didn't disappear overnight, but he also knew the power of storytelling to spark change. And that, he thought, was worth everything. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.